I want you to imagine, just for a second, going about your normal day.
Right.
Maybe you're sitting at your desk running a data query, or maybe you're reading an article on your couch, or maybe you're driving, listening to this very deep dive.
Oh, yeah. A totally normal Tuesday.
Exactly. And then suddenly, every screen just goes blank. The data stream freezes, the audio cuts out, and there it is, the loading wheel just spinning endlessly in the center of your screen.
Ah, yes. It's like the universal symbol of modern digital paralysis, honestly.
It really is.
But, the scenario we're unpacking today goes, well, way beyond a temporary localized dead zone.
Right, because today's mission is to explore a massive, highly specific stress test on modern civilization. We want to know what would actually happen if the global internet infrastructure stopped for exactly 1 hour.
Yeah, just 60 minutes.
Right, not a month-long apocalyptic event, just 60 minutes. We're looking at the factual, cascading physical and structural effects of a 60-minute digital blackout.
And, 60 minutes sounds brief, right? We sit through meetings longer than that.
Very true.
But because our societal infrastructure has shifted from, utilizing the internet as a tool to relying on it as a foundational utility, an hour-long pause reveals every invisible dependency we have.
It's wild to think about.
It really is. It's this fascinating vulnerability because the architecture of the internet is inherently designed to route around damage. But a simultaneous total drop, that creates a completely unprecedented systems failure.
So let's unpack the timeline of that failure, starting from the very first second. Because before we see any macroeconomic consequences, this outage begins as a profound, isolating moment for a typical family at home.
Oh, absolutely.
Like when a page doesn't load, our reflex is always localized troubleshooting, right?
Hey.
We toggle the Wi-Fi, we force the phone to cellular.
Unplug the router, plug it back in.
Exactly. We operate on the assumption of a local hardware failure.
Well, and the psychology of that immediate reaction is rooted in how our devices are designed to handle connectivity drops. Your phone or your laptop doesn't actually know the global internet is down.
It doesn't.
No, not at all. What happens mechanically is a DNS timeout. Your device sends a request to a domain name system server to translate a web address into an IP address. When it doesn't get an answer, the browser simply assumes the pathway is temporarily congested.
Okay, so we sit there in a loop of phantom limb syndrome.
Yes, perfect analogy.
We check the phone, realize nothing is loading, put it down, and then 3 minutes later, the brain automatically reaches for the phone again.
Over and over.
But I have to wonder about the realization timeline here. Given our reliance on cloud-based messaging protocols, how long does it take for a standard user to realize this isn't just their neighborhood ISP acting up?
I'd say the transition from mild annoyance to structural isolation happens within about 5 to 10 minutes.
Wow, that fast.
Yeah, and it's driven entirely by the failure of communication protocols. We think of texting as a cellular function, but the reality is that SMS is largely a fallback now.
Right, because of the apps we use.
Exactly. The primary protocols we use, iMessage, Signal, WhatsApp, they are end-to-end encrypted packets routed through central servers. When the BGP or Border Gateway Protocol tables that map the internet's traffic routes suddenly dissolve, those packets have nowhere to go.
Meaning you can't even send a message to a spouse working in the next town over to ask if their connection is live?
No, you can't. The network silence is absolute.
That is genuinely eerie.
And that silence scales rapidly. Voice over LTE and Wi-Fi calling drop instantly because the carrier networks use internet backbone infrastructure to route cellular data between regional switching centers.
Wait, so even if my phone has bars?
Even if your phone connects to a local cell tower, that tower is essentially a dead end. It cannot backhaul your call to the broader network.
Oh, wow.
So the psychological weight of not being able to verify the safety or status of anyone outside your immediate physical vicinity, that hits very hard, very fast.
Yeah, I can imagine the panic setting in. So once that reality sets in, that the devices are functionally bricked for communication, the focus shifts to the immediate environment, right?
Naturally, yeah.
And for millions of remote or hybrid workers, I feel like the initial realization that the connection is dead might actually trigger a brief sense of relief.
Oh, for sure. The modern-day snow day.
Exactly. Your video conference freezes, your Slack disconnects, and the immediate thought is, well, I'll just go make coffee until it comes back.
It is a really tempting illusion, but that snow day novelty evaporates the moment you attempt to do any asynchronous or offline work.
Because everything is on the cloud.
Exactly. The transition to cloud computing means we no longer store actionable data on local hard drives.
I see this constantly in enterprise architecture. It's not just that your shared documents are inaccessible, it's the authentication layers.
Yes, the APIs.
Right. If you try to open a piece of local software, many of them require an active API handshake to a remote server just to verify your user license or your single sign-on credentials.
And that is the critical bottleneck. SSO authentication protocols like SAML or OAuth require active communication with an identity provider.
Which is completely unreachable.
Exactly. Without the internet, you are functionally locked out of your own local machine's capabilities. Your customer databases, your supply chain management software, your inventory trackers, they all go completely dark.
So no one is getting any work done, offline or otherwise.
The paralysis in the workplace is near instantaneous because the concept of an offline mode has been largely engineered out of modern business tools.
And that structural paralysis extends straight from the home office into the rest of the house, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Because we have aggressively transformed our living spaces into heavily integrated digital ecosystems. I think people misunderstand how these smart devices behave when the external connection is severed.
They really do.
The assumption is they just revert to being dumb appliances, right? Like a smart fridge just becomes a normal fridge.
But they don't just passively power down their smart features, they actually actively fight the outage, which creates a secondary layer of failure.
What do you mean by fight it?
Well, take the Network Time Protocol, or NTP. Your smart thermostat, your automated blinds, your connected kitchen appliances, they are hard-coded to continuously ping external time servers to keep their internal clocks synced.
Oh, I see. So when those external servers stop responding?
The devices panic.
Panic? Really?
That's exactly the term for it in networking. They enter a retry loop. Suddenly you have 30 different IoT devices in a single home firing off continuous aggressive DNS resolution requests trying to phone home.
They're just hammering the router.
Exactly. They essentially launch a localized DDoS attack on your own home router. The local network gets so bogged down processing junk requests from a smart light bulb that even device-to-device local communication completely crashes.
So like, if I'm just trying to cast a downloaded movie from my laptop to my TV over the local Wi-Fi.
Nope, that fails too.
Man, so you are left sitting in a highly advanced technological environment that is functionally turned into a dark, disconnected
It's
box.
a very noisy, invisible box of data traffic, yeah.
But while being stranded at home is frustrating, the stakes change dramatically for anyone who isn't stationary. If we move out of the house and look at the physical movement of society, the disruption to transit and navigation is staggering.
It really exposes how completely we have outsourced our spatial awareness to external data centers. We rely entirely on dynamic real-time mapping now.
And to clarify the mechanism there, the actual GPS satellites orbiting the Earth, the constellation broadcasting the time and location signals, those don't require the terrestrial internet to function right.
Correct.
A smartphone's internal receiver can still theoretically triangulate its exact latitude and longitude.
So the hardware knows exactly where it is on the globe, yes.
Yeah.
But the visual interface you rely on to navigate that globe, that requires the internet.
Because it has to download the map.
Right. Modern mapping applications do not store the entire world's geography locally. They use edge caching to download vector map tiles and routing data on the fly as you move.
Okay, so without the internet.
Your phone has a blue dot, but it is sitting on an endless blank gray grid. You lose turn-by-turn directions, you lose topological context, and crucially, you lose the real-time traffic data.
The traffic data that normally prevents thousands of cars from bottlenecking on the same alternate route.
Exactly.
Does anyone even keep paper maps in their glove box anymore? I mean, how long until a simple commute turns into a gridlocked maze?
Minutes, realistically. And that immediately translates into physical gridlock. Ride-sharing algorithms freeze instantly.
Oh, right. Uber and Lyft.
The driver's application can't calculate the route or process the handshake to complete the fare. Delivery fleets are stranded. But the layer that really amplifies the crisis is at the institutional level.
I look at aviation for this. The planes in the air are flying on independent internal avionics and radio frequencies, so they don't just fall out of the sky.
Thankfully, no, the aircraft themselves remain structurally safe. The point of failure is ground control and surface management.
Because they need the internet.
Heavy reliance on it, yes. The Federal Aviation Administration and global air traffic control networks rely on interconnected server infrastructure to ingest ADS-B flight tracking data, coordinate weather routing, and manage gate logistics.
So if the regional air traffic control centers cannot exchange data streams with central command, they basically go blind to the macro picture.
And in aviation, as well as in rail and public transit networks, the standard operating procedure for a macro-level data blackout is a hard system stop to prevent catastrophic collisions.
A hard stop, so everything just freezes in place.
Transit authorities are forced to hold vehicles in place. Planes are held on the tarmac, incoming flights are placed in holding patterns or diverted to the nearest visual approach runway, and automated train systems are halted at their platforms.
You have millions of people suddenly frozen in transit, which is just contributing to the cascading gridlock on the ground.
Exactly. It's a massive physical traffic jam caused by a digital outage.
Which naturally accelerates the systemic pressure. You have people stuck at home, you have physical movement grinding to a halt, and that brings us to the highest stakes of this 60-minute stress test. The absolute freeze of our financial architecture and the vulnerability of our emergency services.
And the financial aspect is particularly jarring because of how rapidly society has moved toward a cashless operational model.
It's so true. We practically declared cash obsolete. We use digital wallets, tap-to-pay, biometric verification.
We just expect it to work.
The irony is that during this specific hour, a crumpled $20 bill forgotten in a jacket pocket becomes the only reliable liquid asset you have.
It's suddenly the most valuable thing in your wallet.
So if someone is standing at a grocery store checkout when the hour begins, what is the exact mechanical failure of that transaction?
It fails at the API handshake. When you tap a card or a phone, the point of sale terminal isn't just checking if you have money.
What else is it doing?
It is sending a highly encrypted cryptographic token to a payment gateway, which then routes it to your issuing bank to verify funds and instantly check against global fraud algorithms.
And all of that happens in, what, a second?
Milliseconds, usually. But without the internet routing that packet, the terminal hard fails.
Wow. And it's not just retail. The ATM networks suffer the exact same fate.
Right, because ATMs are essentially just highly secure nodes on a banking network. If an ATM loses its secure tunnel to the central banking server, it is programmed to automatically lock down.
Just a brick in the wall.
Exactly. It cannot verify your balance, and to prevent double spending or fraudulent withdrawals, the machine simply goes out of service.
And if we zoom out to the macroeconomic scale, algorithmic high-frequency trading halts, international wire transfers freeze, and supply chain logistics payments are suspended.
The global flow of capital drops to absolute zero.
But there is a fascinating hidden physical consequence to all of these data centers and financial servers suddenly stopping their operations. If global internet traffic drops and massive server farms instantly stop processing data, they also instantly stop drawing power.
Right, the power grid voltage spike.
Exactly. Data centers consume gigawatts of continuous electricity. If millions of servers idle simultaneously because there is no traffic to route, that electrical demand vanishes in milliseconds.
And the grid can't handle that kind of sudden imbalance.
No, the power grid requires perfect equilibrium between generation and load. If the load drops that drastically, the unspent energy surges through the grid, forcing power operators to scrambling to shed generation or reroute the excess to prevent physical transformers from literally blowing up.
It perfectly illustrates how digital infrastructure and physical infrastructure are no longer separate entities. They are completely intertwined.
And that convergence is where we see the most concerning vulnerabilities regarding public safety. We have this fundamental assumption that emergency services like calling 911 are untouchable, isolated systems.
We assume that safety operates outside the bounds of the commercial internet.
Right?
But that is a legacy mindset. We have transitioned massive portions of our public safety networks to digital architecture.
How so?
Well, consider how many homes and businesses have shifted away from copper landlines to Voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP.
Oh, right. Most office phones are VoIP now.
Exactly. If the internet drops, those VoIP phones are entirely dead. You cannot even dial out.
But even if an individual manages to find a legacy copper line, or if localized cellular traffic allows a call to somehow reach the dispatch center, the dispatch infrastructure itself has evolved, hasn't it?
Yes, significantly.
Yeah.
Modern dispatch relies on computer-aided dispatch or CAD systems. These are heavily networked platforms.
What do they do exactly?
They pull live mapping data, they instantly cross-reference caller IDs with property databases, and they transmit mission-critical data directly to the mobile data terminals. The laptops mounted inside police cruisers, fire trucks, and ambulances.
So if the internet goes down, the dispatcher might be able to hear the caller on a localized radio fallback, but their screen is essentially blank.
Completely blank. They are instantly thrust back into analog
It
operations.
means what? Pens and paper?
Literally, yes. They have to write the emergency details on physical paper and relay the information via localized voice radio.
That slows everything down.
Massively. And then the responding units have to navigate to the scene without real-time routing, potentially driving straight into the physical gridlock we discussed earlier.
Man, and if an emergency spans multiple jurisdictions, say a massive multi-car accident on a stranded highway or a large-scale fire, the inability of different local agencies to seamlessly share digital incident data creates severe operational delays.
An hour without these interconnectivity protocols is an hour of extreme physical vulnerability.
It really is.
So if we synthesize the entire 60 minutes, what we see isn't just a list of inconveniences, it is a rapid algorithmic collapse.
It begins with the psychological isolation of failed messaging.
Right. And then it moves into the structural paralysis of cloud-dependent workplaces and the internal crashing of automated smart homes.
Then it spills into the physical world, freezing transportation logistics and mapping software.
And it culminates in a hard stop of global financial fluidity and a dangerous blind spot in public safety coordination.
It is a sequence of highly complex failures, all tethered to the exact same invisible cord. We've built an incredibly advanced, highly efficient global society, but we have placed all of that efficiency onto a single, shared foundation.
The resilience of the system is entirely dependent on continuous data flow.
A dependency that the vast majority of users never actively consider until the loading wheel appears and refuses to go away.
Right. When the screens go dark, suddenly all those invisible threads become very, very real.
Which brings us to the end of today's deep dive. We've explored the mechanics of a theoretical, globally synchronized one-hour blackout. We look at the API handshakes, the routing tables, and the grid spikes.
A very stressful 60 minutes.
To say the least. But I want to leave you with a final, slightly more personal question to ponder on your own. We mapped out the cascading failures across the macro sectors of society. But take a look at your own immediate surroundings right now.
Just look around the room you're in.
Yeah. If that invisible cord was cut this very second and all external data flows stopped without warning, how functional is your physical reality? And how prepared are you to navigate your own life completely offline?